Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Funvocacy episode 15. I'm Kanav Rishi Kumar, your host for the day, being co-hosted by Juggy. I'm obviously live in the BBC studio in New Delhi, and we've used state-of-the-art green screen technologies to project what seems to be a messy room behind me. 2020 has been a harsh year for everyone, and we hope 2021 brings much-needed relief, sense of safety, and stability for humanity. And this is going to be our first episode in 2021. And I'd like to welcome you all and thank you so much for all the support which you people have given us throughout the time. Before I introduce our guests for today, we do have a small vape news update for you, being presented by our very own Manish, who is a very serious member of AVI. I'm going to use serious because he usually is. We are teaching him how to be funny, but it's going to take some time, guys. You'll have to wait for it. But in the meantime, please enjoy this.
Enough. In recent vape news, in the Asia Pacific region, lawmakers in Philippines have questioned the funding from foreign NGOs to influence vape policy. Specifically, they have said that the funding by anti-vaping organizations such as the Union and Bloomberg Philanthropies to the country's FDA denotes a conflict of interest and have sought that the money be returned. Australia recently moved towards legalization of vaping, but through the medical route, which many vapers have questioned. The WHO has released a report on e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products in which it has recommended a ban on open tank systems. If globally implemented, this could signal the end of vaping as we know it, destroy the independent industry, and hand over the vaping market to large tobacco companies. The report is being presented to the executive board of WHO, which is meeting this week. AVI and other organizations are sending submissions against the adoption of any such measure. The WHO has also launched a program to make 100 million people quit every year. While this is a laudable goal, it remains to be seen how effective this initiative will be, especially in the absence of any use of tobacco harm reduction alternatives. Meanwhile, the Indian government has proposed amendments to the tobacco law, which introduce draconian and unimplementable new measures such as a ban on single stick sale, ban on displaying tobacco products in tobacco shops, ban on smoking rooms, etc. AVI will be sending in comments to the new bill seeking that meaningful quit support be provided to smokers and tobacco harm reduction be made a key pillar of tobacco control measures. That's all for this week. Back to you, Kanav.
Thank you so much, Manish, for that segment. Hope you found that segment very informative, guys. We plan to do such a segment in every episode of Funvocacy to update you on what all has been happening. And do let us know if you like it, if you would like us to add some more or make it more detailed. And we shall try to incorporate whatever you guys want. We are, after all, here for you. And with that, guys, let's get started with today's episode. Funniest, but funniest, Juggy, how you doing? How are things going?
Hanging in there, man. It's a different things are going on. Things seem to be frozen. But kind of you can take it.
And joining us today, guys, Jagannath University, and forgive me if I pronounce Chulalongkorn University.
Yeah, that's right. Hello to all.
Hello. How have you been doing? How are things over there?
Pretty much the I think we might have something look up to look forward to. Hopefully, because we during the COVID, when it's not so bad, when the condition got better, we got to talk with a few of the political parties plus the office of ombudsman. So things might look better in the future, hopefully.
Really hoping for the best, Asa. I'll get back to you in a little bit of time. Joining us also today is Nancy. Nancy is a passionate THR advocate, executive coordinator for the Coalition of Asia Tobacco Harm Reduction Advocates, CHRA, as you all may know. She has been involved in the consumer tobacco harm reduction movement since 2014, when she co-founded Rio Vapers Communication Advocacy. Again, please forgive me if I pronounced it incorrect. Did I pronounce it correct? Did I pronounce it correct? Or if I did not, please.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's in the native language Tereo. It's Aotearoa Vapers Community Advocacy.
Okay.
It's fine.
I'm going to try to get that right once again. Could you pronounce it again? Aotearoa Vapers Community Advocacy. Right. How are things with you, Nancy? How are things over there in New Zealand?
Things are good. It's interesting being in New Zealand because we're so far away from everybody, and life is pretty normal here. I think because we're so far away and our borders are closed. We're just, as far as advocacy and vaping is concerned, we're just waiting for the new government to come up with the regulations, and we're legal now, fully legal. So we're just waiting for the consultation for the regulations to see what they come up with. So things are good. No complaints.
Excellent. We're hoping for the best for you guys always, and hopefully the world will learn something from there and take the cue. We also have joining us Jena today. Jena comes with some serious, solid background in the publishing industry, joining Mossman Communications and Medcom in 1992 as founding president at the age of 28. As the owner of her own publication relations company in Manila, she has been dealing with the media as an advocate for many years. Jena, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
How are things over there?
We're okay. It's just that with the COVID-19, we have banned travelers from different countries, particularly the UK. But otherwise, things are okay.
Right. And how is the general vape scenario over there?
THR efforts are leveled up last year, and we're looking at improving our efforts more this year.
Which is excellent. Tobacco harm reduction, 2020 has taught us that prevention is definitely an option, but when you can't reduce the damage, reduce the damage that it does.
Correct.
Right. With that, absolutely let my co-host everything's fine. Thumbs up, things are fine. Oh, excellent. So with that, I'm going to Jaggi, who's going to definitely decide how we're going to proceed today. Jaggi, please, the virtual stage is yours.
No, see, I'm once again frozen here, which is kind of good because I've been making faces at you. Oh, shucks.
Yeah.
Okay, it's come back. No, okay.
Might have been frozen on yours. It was working here.
Oh, shucks. Okay, no, in a sense, what we thought we would do is try to get Asia Pacific, advocates together and discuss, because we all have a lot of common problems. We have a lot of lessons to learn from each other, and as we move forward into the coming years and years ahead, we really need to be more inclusive and collaborative in our efforts, because we really can take away a lot of lessons from each other. And that's why I think something like this is of great value to all of us, and hence we are together. Back at you, Kanav.
Excellent, Jaggi. That has That's been so great, so helpful. You definitely got the show rolling. You definitely set the first for the day. I'm so impressed. In case it's not evident, I'm being extremely sarcastic.
I can
But
see you.
on that note,
I can see you.
let's set the tone for today's show then. See, some of the world's highest smoking rates can be found in Asia Pacific region, with 2.3 million deaths from diseases caused by tobacco smoking each year, right? Which is a huge number. Almost half of the 5 million global tobacco deaths each year, again, half of the entire world's tobacco related deaths are in the Asia Pacific region. That's disturbing. You need to grasp what we are saying right now. The entire world, half of the deaths because of tobacco and its related illnesses and diseases are in Asia and Pacific, in one region of the world. And yet our countries seem to be doing little or no work on harm reduction, apart from visuals and window dressing the whole thing. You know, New Zealand has set a different tone altogether, but in general, in Asia Pacific at least, is more about pretending as if you're doing something, or the governments are doing something, and not really about addressing the problem and trying to resolve anything or make things better.
Mhm.
So a few countries, however, have taken a very proactive approach in this region and have taken path-breaking initiatives. While New Zealand is amongst the first countries to enact a regulation on e-cigarettes, even if not idle, it is at least an acknowledgement of its efficiency and that it should be encouraged. Its big brother and neighbor, however, have taken an opposite approach, and vaping in Australia is under threat. Philippines faced an imminent threat of ban and has survived due to immense work done by tobacco harm advocates and the parliament where they questioned the tobacco controls, funding from Bloomberg to drive an agenda. Thailand faces a problem very much like India, where all commercial activity on vapes is banned, yet personal consumption is permitted. Um, what we've been seeing is that the tobacco harm reduction advocates are under attack, right? Attack on consumer advocates are growing. Asa, if I'm not mistaken, your ECST just got attacked in a scientific paper, and elsewhere too, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us about that? What happened and what was the attack, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, they are trying to tie me with, well, first the heading, the topics of the paper, saying that they want to celebrate their wins over tobacco industry, of the strategy used by tobacco industry. So the topic, I can't really recall the exact wording they're using, but it's something like, they have a victory over the tobacco industry tactics of trying to lift the ban on electronic cigarettes in Thailand. But inside the paper, they talk about me, talk about ECST, and how we are supposedly tied to Philip Morris International PMI, plus other tobacco industry, and they call us tobacco industry. So, but there's a term of conflict. During the end, they said that they have no proof. So, I mean, like, we were stunned. They said it's a scientific paper, but you have no proof. But they mentioned me, they mentioned ECST, and if people who read it not careful enough, they will expect me that, okay, I probably work for PMI, for tobacco industry, which is ridiculous. I mean, it is not only it's untrue, but it's ridiculous. It's way. I can't think that they could stoop this low to discredit us just because we are a consumer advocacy group. They said that I got paid from the Philip Morris International via the FSFW and all those ties, all very crazy idea. And to tell you the truth, ECST doesn't even have its own account. We are just a consumer group. We're not even legal. We are not a legal entity. We are just a few people doing what we love with a passion. We're doing with passions, and that's all that had been driving us up until today since the conception of ECST. So we are doing what we love to do, and what we are trying to say is that by ourselves we have proven that sure we can quit, and the best way to quit is by using vaping, vaporizers, or electronic cigarette, whichever way, whatever name you want to use. But hey, this is one of the way that help us quit
Absolutely.
smoking
But
the regular cigarette.
Asa, what do you reckon? What is the cause of these attacks on you and on a lot of other advocacy groups also? What do you think is triggering these attacks?
Well, probably looking at the points of view of the attackers, they had been successful for so many years, for decades, on fighting smoking and tobacco use. And probably somehow in their mind, they also think that vaping is also a tobacco use, which we've tried to say, that there's no combustion in electronic cigarettes. And the only part that came from tobacco, of course, is the nicotine, but it's a very, very small amount. It's like 0.3% of the liquid, and the rest is not. It's completely another story. But from if I'm correct, so it's their pride. It's their pride, it's their ego that are driving them, and they are trying to say like, okay, well, since we already said that vaping is also tobacco use, so let's ban vaping, let's go anti-vaping altogether, without without understanding what actually really is vaping, what really is electronic cigarette. We have specialists in Thailand, like on the news, on the public news, on big channels, and they call themselves specialists on electronic cigarette, and they pick up an item and they turn around to the next guy and say, "Hey, dude, how do you turn this thing on?" I mean, like, yeah. That's just a few of the samples. So it's probably the ego that's driving them. That's all I can say.
Right. And
But
Gina, maybe with your extensive background in publishing, you can help me understand this. When when a scientific journal makes an accusation and then puts a small disclaimer saying we have no proof, this is just what we are saying, is that appropriate behavior?
No, it isn't, because a scientific journal should be scientifically accurate. So they cannot make assumptions without any proof. So I don't think that that should be allowed at all.
So it is immoral. They seem to have gone off track and taken extremely risky measures just to discredit and discourage our works. Correct?
It appears that way, yes.
And in your opinion, how do we address this? How do we, you know, with these attacks coming on us, which are baseless and just making false accusations, they're just throwing random things at us now. They're just randomly saying anything, and then they're saying, putting a small disclaimer: we have no proof. This is what we think it is. But people read the journal, they don't read the end
This
paragraph on the ground, and then those who are not aware of it start believing what they've read, and that's kind of bad. So how do we deal with this? How do we address this? How do we maybe if you could share some insights on what we should be doing to deal with such kind of weird accusations by journals?
I think when disinformation and misinformation comes out, groups like us who have the knowledge and the experience of how things work in tobacco harm reduction, we should be able to come out and say that's wrong. Um, address the issue and answer the accusations, because by not saying anything, you're actually allowing them to spread that disinformation. So we should come out hard and fast as much as possible in correcting the disinformation and misinformation that these groups are spreading.
Right. And when we do this, should we what path would you advise we take? Should we just like write an email to them, or should we write a public letter, or a very open letter where we draw their attention to what they're saying and the implications it can have and how they're baseless? If you could just elaborate on the right path to strike them back. We get it, hit them back hard and fast, but exactly how?
Right. I think India wrote a letter to one of the scientific journals addressing the issues that was made by a journal, and they did it, and that was published. It would also help if we can write to editors, because media, uh, despite what other people think, they would like to be impartial. So if you give an email, write them an email and say, we'd like to correct this information given by another group, I'm sure the editors would entertain that, because they want to be objective. So we will just try and put our case together and explain that, things don't add up.
Right. Okay.
So you can do it, two ways. You can write to the journal that made the ridiculous claim, and the other one is go to other media outlets and say, because I'm sure that journal also came out with press releases. So in the interest of accuracy and fairness, if we write to the editors, I'm sure they would also entertain our letters.
Right. Thank you so much, Gina. Nancy, do you have anything to add to this as you know, a THR warrior, I'll say? Uh,
Yeah. Okay. I'm in an interesting position because I also worked in scientific research back in the United States. I was a research administrator. So I understand a lot more about funding mechanisms and bias, the court of public opinion, how things are played in the court of public opinion, which happens to be in this case, not just the journal and what they're doing to Asa, but also in the media and in newspapers throughout the region. We're in a very interesting situation. I'll touch upon the situation with Asa first, okay, with the British Medical Journal and that article, okay. Those people, when people do scientific research, I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible, a very not simple thing. When people do scientific research, the normal method for doing that, it's called the scientific method. You have a hypothesis, which is your question. Then you develop a method, and that method will either prove or disprove whatever your question is, and then you supply your results, okay, based on your method. Now, what is happening, what we suspect is happening, because I don't want to get nailed with a libel case, is that depending on where the funding is coming from, is the bias or the skew for the science and what those results may be. Now, in the situation with what ACE is dealing with, those people come from a very well-known organization that gets funding from the Bloomberg philanthropies through the union, okay? There are organizations out there, they're like pseudo-scientific organizations, I guess would be the best way to explain it. And their main goal is to promote anti-THR simply because they either A, they come from a quit or die background, or B, there are things going on in the background that aren't public knowledge yet that suit certain vested interests. Okay. And what is happening is not just that, but on the flip side of that is a lot of these scientists and a lot of these anti-THR people in that field, they presumed the consumers were dumb. They presumed that we were just, whatever, just on the uneducated, unwashed masses. Let's put it that way. And they're coming up against people who have science backgrounds and people who have professional backgrounds. And, they're not, this is not a fad. These are educated people that are making informed choices and have done their own research. They see this as a threat. We are a threat to them. We are a threat to what we would call their shtick, their routine. A lot of these people, they do tobacco control, quit or die. This is a lifetime gig for them. They just want, if they're in university, they just want to get to their point of tenure or pension and move on. Okay. This is now changing the paradigm. This is now changing the way things always worked, and people don't like change. This is where I think a lot of the attacks are coming from. They're attacking people that don't go, it's either my way or the highway. And they think that the consumers, it's an easy mark. They don't expect us to fight back, but we are. And that makes us even scarier to them. Now, in our region, in Asia Pacific, there are a couple of other aspects that are going on that I'm not sure you've covered before or you've discussed with people before. But we're also the region with the most government-owned tobacco manufacturing and production. And that plays into the very high smoking rates in the region. And that also plays into the government's not wanting, again, tobacco harm reduction, because now that affects the government purse. So it seems black and white, but it's not. It's very complicated, and it kind of spins around, and everything feeds into everything else. So the point of CHRA and the point of all of us working together is, like, for example, yes, I'm in New Zealand, and yes, I'm in a very lucky position. But it took us 6 years and longer. There are people fighting for this, for 10 years to get us where we are now. But we had scientists on board. We had researchers on board. We had the government on board. We have the Ministry of Health on board. We're very lucky. But there was a lot of work that went into that. Okay. And there's also, New Zealand doesn't have any tobacco interests. We don't have any government-owned tobacco manufacturing interests. Okay. That helped. But in order to be able to fully understand what's going on, you have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture in Asia Pacific is governments are heavily invested and involved in the production, manufacture, and sale of tobacco.
Right. So that is definitely playing a role. See, that does have an impact. We can see it from the example which you just explained, that in New Zealand, where there is no such involvement of the government and nothing for the government to gain, they seem to be more pro THR in general.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, and we also, our indigenous folks, the Maori, have and the Pacific peoples have the highest smoking rates. But they also happen to be the most economically disadvantaged as well. And that's the other thing that comes in about nicotine. I'm trying to keep this so simple, but it's so complicated. A lot of people use nicotine as a stress relief. So a lot of the people that are smoking, people say you're addicted to nicotine, but nicotine gives them a certain benefit that they can't get from something else. Okay. So when you have people that demonize nicotine, you're demonizing those same people. I mean, we have some of the highest tobacco taxes in the world. I think Australia beats us. But now you have people that are living on social welfare that are using 60% of their benefit to be able to get the relief that they get from nicotine. And the government saw that, and the government's like, no, there's got to be a better way. So that's what we're working on. But again, it comes back down to the complications of all the different aspects that play into this. Because across the ditch, like you mentioned, in Australia, they look at nicotine, and nicotine's a bad guy. They don't even think about the combustion aspect. So the short answer, I guess, if there is a short answer, is everything is not what it seems. You have to get down below the surface to see what's really going on.
Absolutely. And with these episodes and with everything we plan, the thing is, that's what this Funvocacy is all about, spreading this awareness. Because while we, the advocates for THR, we are slightly more aware, and some of us are definitely a lot more aware, such as you, but we have a slight understanding of what is happening and why what is happening. Why is, the path which is being taken, why is it being taken? But the only time any change can happen is when we are able to reach out to the masses, explain to them, and show them what is happening, so that they can stand up for themselves. Because by ourselves. We are a very small group, very weak in numbers, and when we try to make some big change, we get attacked, as we saw.
Yeah. I mean, and we have to humanize the issue too. And that's one thing I do want to bring up. I'm interrupting you and I'm sorry. We have to humanize this issue. And it's very difficult in countries where it's banned and you're under threat of being thrown in jail or fines. But government officials and public health officials, they need to understand these are people. I think they've dehumanized us because in their mind we're all numbers. We as advocates have to humanize it in our patch. We have to show these are people. We have people here. There's one guy here, Tom, smoked for 47 years, and he picked up a 12 meg mouth to lung kit menthol, and he was off the cigarettes in a week. That's the stuff that we need to promote. That we have to humanize it. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely, absolutely, because this is the fact which I was talking about, that since it is human life, every one matters, every life counts, and we need to understand wherever we cannot eliminate the damage completely, we need to reduce it as much as possible. That is what tobacco harm reduction is, which is what we're trying to spread to the public now. And I completely agree with your perspective. And that was extremely insightful. Thank you so much. I'm going to take this to the next question, unless Jaggi, you have something to add. Because you're frozen in that look, which looks like you have something to say.
Now, you see, to add to what Nancy was saying, you see, we are all former smokers or former tobacco users, and we understand, that it took us a great effort to actually be in a position to kick the habit. Now, the people in tobacco control and Bloomberg and so on and so forth, I wonder if they've ever smoked in their lives. I wonder if anyone really amongst them was able to quit in their, quit or die kind of mechanism. Because if they were, and if they actually had former smokers in their midst, they would understand what problems really are, and that what we are suggesting with, vapes and nicotine harm reduction therapies and so on, which is what we all advocate, things that saved us, will actually be promoted. Unfortunately, that seems to be a gap that exists, and none of them are therefore willing to talk about it. They're taking this ultra simplistic view, which is very convenient for them. And the government, of course, in Asia Pacific, as Nancy pointed out, almost everyone has got vested interests. Almost all governments own tobacco, control tobacco, manufacture and even distribute cigarettes, so on. So when you have situations like this, I don't understand how government's view can be deemed to be impartial when they have one hand in the kitty, and so it's very, very simple. That's one of the points that I thought would be interesting to think about and look at and see where is it we can go from there, especially when you have agencies of this nature that deliberately do not want to understand because it serves them well.
Jaggi, that was quite deep, but I was fascinated
I
by
may
your.
add, excuse. Yeah,
Sorry, Asa, please go on.
I would like to add something about what Nancy and Jackie had just said. About dehumanize us. I have at one of the meeting with the government people, one of the biggest meeting about 3 years ago. One of the doctors said that you probably have heard this. I mean, a lot of people would have heard this, but one of the doctors said the minute you pick up a cigarette and started smoking, you lose the basic human right. That's I mean, like, where did they get that idea from? The minute. And also with what Jackie had said, like he said that the doctors and the antis, you were questioning if they have ever smoked at all in their life. I have asked that same question to a certain doctor, and he just said right away, said, no, I never smoked in my life. It's a bad thing. I already know it's a bad thing. So, I've never picked up a cigarette. No, it's a bad thing. And he kept saying that. But in the meantime, he also said that quitting is very easy. It takes willpower. Excuse me, if you have never smoked, if you have never been addicted to any kind of cigarettes or nicotine or caffeine or whatsoever, how do you know it's so simple? It only takes willpower. If it's that easy, we won't be sitting here, like, hey, it's easy. I quit smoking. But that's not the point.
Well, here's another thing, Ace. I want to bring up because we've had these discussions as well. There are people who, and I don't know how this plays out in other countries, but I know it plays out in the United States, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. Cigarettes currently have close to, I think, 5,000 or 6,000 chemicals in it now during the manufacturing process. That started in the 80s, right before the MSAs, okay, the Master Settlement Agreement in the States, when they started making the push for lower nicotine and low tar and all these like instead of just rollies without a filter, right? A lot of people who smoked the old time cigarettes weren't exposed to as many chemicals as we were when we were smoking. Okay. So therefore I've asked this of a couple of researchers and they kind of looked at me and said, that does make sense. Okay. Because a lot of the chemicals that were put into lower tar or to lower nicotine actually potentated nicotine in a strange kind of way. So therefore it kind of increased the addictive qualities of the cigarettes that you were smoking. Okay. Also increased the harm from the cigarettes, the combustion of all those chemicals. If somebody started smoking in the 50s or the 60s and they quit in the 80s, it probably was much easier for them to quit than it would have been for us because they weren't exposed to the chemicals that we were all exposed to. And that's one of those things that always kind of trips up the anti-people when you say that to them is like, listen, if you do find someone that was a smoker, okay, and they quit, I quit cold turkey. Yeah, when was it? Oh, 1982. Ah, okay. But they don't want to make that acknowledgement of that differentiation of the addictive qualities and the exposures of cigarettes. So yes, they operate under the quit or die because they don't understand, because they don't want to understand. And yes, doctors dehumanize smokers everywhere across the planet because, you started smoking. But here's the other thing. The majority of us who started smoking before the legal age, whatever that legal age was. So we really weren't cognizant enough to actually make that decision legally, but we did anyway, didn't we?
Yeah, personally, I started smoking in the 70s, which of course that means I was still in my teenage. That's where I started smoking with peer pressures and everything else. And personally, it's for me. At that time, all the heroes, all the movie stars, they smoke and they look cool. I want to look cool too, like westernized. So, hey, smoking is making me an adult. I'm cool because I'm smoking, and it's what almost like you said, about almost 40 years ago. Finally, about 10 years ago, I found my way out. By using electronic cigarettes. So I'm so glad. But yeah, you're right. Like in the old time, there are not as much chemical substances as what they have nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. That is all quite. Am I audible? First, have to keep checking. I've done a few episodes where I was silent. So,
Yeah, you are.
so we've that was quite insightful. And Nancy, you're actually opening up my eye too. I've been part of the THR for almost 2 years now, and you're bringing out points which even I was not aware of. The fact that back then, when people quit cold turkey, they were smoking cigarettes which had far less chemicals, and cigarettes today are engineered to be more addictive, to increase your dependency. Uh, it is a fact, and it was just a point which I never realized till you said it, and that is brilliant. Like, being actively a part of THR for the last 2 years, could not bring this point out. I was not aware of it. I highly doubt the public is aware of it, and these things need to get out. We need to spread awareness. We need to reach out to more people, which brings me to the next point. How do we bring THR consumers from Asia together so we can have a larger voice? How do we, not just Asia, maybe globally, how do we get all the people who are in THR united to work as a single, more unified, stronger force?
I think we do that already. I mean, that's part of what CAFRA is. And I know that, Ace and I, and even Samrat, I mean, we all work internationally. I work with ETHRA. I work with the guys in Latin America, the people in, there is a very strong advocacy cooperation network globally. The issue in Asia Pacific is not so much the advocates themselves. A lot of it has to do with the consumers. There's a lot of fear of having their face out there. They're afraid of the repercussions of that. That's our biggest issue in our region. Especially, I've dealt with it in Australia. Trying to get an Australian to give me a testimonial. It's not easy because they're afraid, because people have been thrown in jail. So we have to create a safe space for the consumers. We have to share their stories for them if they themselves cannot do it for whatever reason. We have to humanize it. Those of us who have those contacts in government and public health, that's what we need to do. And that's what we are doing. I would say we're doing it, and we're doing it pretty well considering the situations that we're all operating under. Yeah.
Right. And Gina, maybe you can add to this, and you can give us your take on how do we get this. You can be more specific with the Asia region. How do we get the consumer advocacy groups to get together a lot more, actively participate, and reach out to the entire Asia population of consumers in a more unified manner?
Right. Well, firstly, I think each country is doing a very good job in leveling up the THR efforts in the region. And as Nancy mentioned, we're doing this on a regional scale via CAFRA. Every month we have meetings, we form strategies, we come up with webinars, and we share insights with the media as a group, which makes it even more compelling because you're talking about several countries under one umbrella, which is CAFRA. And through CAFRA as well, we were able to um, uh, give insights to other parts of the world on what we're doing. Um, and they give insights also to policymakers in each country. So I think it's already there. The system has been established, it's been instituted, and constant work on a weekly and monthly basis are being done by the group. So, yeah, we're leveling up and we're doing the best that we could. Spread the news about TR.
Right. So let me rephrase my question to make it more of what I meant. Maybe I phrased it wrong initially. We're all aware of the efforts which we're all doing, but
Mm-hmm.
just like a rocket which is taking off, it needs this really powerful booster in the initial phase to reach out of the atmosphere. How do we, in a short span, grow, expand, and reach enough people to start having a massive impact, not on just tobacco harm reduction as a in general, but on the policies which are being drafted, on the consumers, so that we're able to reach out to them? How can we expand the impact which we are having in and rapidly?
Media will play a very important role in doing that, mainly because our message will be sent across fast, and social media can also be used to spread our message. So, media plays a very important role, and also we can spread this more by tapping more former smokers who have switched and getting their stories out there, because we don't want the same people talking about quitting smoking or switching to e-cigarettes. I mean, they already know most of the key advocates in Asia Pacific. What we have to do is find other people that current smokers can relate to, and then tap the media to spread that news, and get social media to further strengthen that effort.
Yeah, to get
Right.
out of the echo chamber, we have to go beyond ourselves. And the media is one way of doing it. Social media is another way of doing it. We're at CAFRA. We are, we develop the newscast that goes out every 3 weeks, plus the Voices for Vape webinar. And then, we're going to be starting up something similar to what you guys are doing here. But it's a matter of engaging. We have to get people interested enough to engage, to get involved. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that all of us have, is getting the actual punters or the people involved and engaged and staying engaged. And that, we can only do so much, and only give them as much information as we can, and try to make it, instead of it turning into, team free stuff. And, we got to keep plodding along. That's all. But the main thing is to get out of the echo chamber. Absolutely. And that we're working really hard, Jena and I, Asa, we're working really hard to get ourselves out of the echo chamber, and we are getting some traction. But it's not going to be fast.
We
Yeah, but
yeah,
yes,
if I may add, we also coming from Thailand, right? I have to speak from the viewpoint of Thai people. First of all, the language barrier is it's very high. When people try to say something in English, most Thai people, especially vapers or smokers, they don't understand English language, even Thai language itself. We have all varieties of Thai. I mean, in India, you probably understand this. You have so many dialects and different type of languages, the local dialect and everything. It's the same in Thailand, and Thai people is like in Philippines or in India, or especially in New Zealand. Most people can at least understand English language, more or less. But Thai people are less. We have to admit, like there are very, very few Thai people who can understand. So, the impact that we want to make, we have to make it simple. We have to make it short. The attention span is very short, but we have to take this the opportunity of this COVID-19 pandemic. And since people cannot go out, they will turn into social media more and more. And we have to find out, and we also have to look at, okay, what kind of social media people are using the most. Like in Thailand, we use Line, and then of course there's Facebook. Not much Twitter, or there's a lot of Twitter, and then also TikTok and other varieties. But in saying that, our antis, the people who are against us, people who the people who are in the rank, in the place that other people, regular citizens will believe, because they are doctors, they are government officials, and they have a lot of money, which we don't, and they can pay news media, the big channels, they can pay, and they can make threat to other medias that, if that particular medias want to say something on our behalf, or want to weigh it out, have it like, okay, this is for the tobacco, the anti-tobacco, and this is the consumer point. They cannot do it, because all the big government officials, especially the people in high ranking, they will just say like, no, you cannot do that. If you do that, if you print or post or share medias like that, it means you are supporting tobacco industry. That's the word they're saying, which went back to what we started this Funvocacy, the 15th one, with. It's about the allocation and all that research paper. It came from this basic idea, and then they're gonna say that we consumer are tobacco industry. So if the social media that we want to present our views, want to print or want to share our views, they'll get a phone call and say, hey, you are supporting tobacco industry. I'm going to shut you down. So it had happened. So that's the obstacles that we are facing. So it's I know it's not fun, but it's what we are facing right now, and we are trying our best to just get out of that kind of situation. And Nancy will will vouch me on that. That every time Dr. Fasalinos, Dr. Faudia, Dr. Fasad, every time he met me, every time we meet, he will say like, "Oh, I'm glad you're still not in jail. You're still a free man."
True.
Because
Very
even
true.
Fasad knows
Yeah.
exactly how risky it is to be, to
Yeah.
live a life like this in this country.
And a lot of people, like we have, advocates in Hong Kong, and they live under constant threat too. So with all these different aspects and all these different governments and all these different environments that people are operating under, it's kind of like herding cats. But at the same time, I think the benefit of everything that we do is that we do support each other. If ASA needs something, I'll do a white paper for ASA. If Hong Kong needs something, I'll do it for Hong Kong. I mean, and that's the beauty of what we do. Getting it out of the echo chamber, that's probably the most effective and efficient way of getting it out of the echo chamber, is to do those submissions and to deal with those government officials and those public health officials. I mean, especially now that it can't get on a plane and go see somebody, So yeah, there's adjustments that need to be made, but I think we're getting there. But nothing is fast, Kevin. Nothing will be fast.
Right. So we're in this for the long war. We're ready. We're all equipped. I think the team's good, and we're decent in number. I think we can take this battle long. In the meantime, Nancy, we do have a question.
Yeah.
Cigarettes today are more than just tobacco, more addictive and more harmful. That is what you said, and I resonated with that. Do we have research which proves this, or can we make this a fighting point without evidence, or do we need some specific evidence for this?
I mean, to find out about the constituents of cigarettes, the information is out there. We had it like 7 years ago. I don't know where it is, but it's been proven that cigarettes from, like, say, 1970 versus cigarettes from 1990, the amount of additives and chemical processing that tobacco went through in order to create these low tar cigarettes, low nicotine cigarettes, the things that were included in the filter systems. Yeah, that's all out there. And maybe Farsalinos might be the guy that might know all that. He might have that readily available here, Pelosa. But yeah, cigarettes are definitely much more addictive now than they were, say, 30, 40 years ago. Absolutely. That's a known fact.
Okay. Right. Thank you. And there is another question which I want you to address. I will definitely take inputs and insights from the other two also, but I want you to give us an answer for this. This is a question from us. The influence of Bloomberg-funded groups is becoming especially troublesome in Asia, in influencing tobacco policies and dragging them down towards bans and restrictions. Sorry, dragging the THR policies down, right? Apart from what's happening in Philippines, in Vietnam too, these groups are forming policies on behalf of the government. And in India, the new tobacco laws have been drafted by them as well. Why do you think this is happening? And what can we do to stop this meddling?
Okay, a couple of things. One, I think Bloomberg probably, and I've spoken to Clive Bates about this, I think he's been on a mission for anti-smoking for a while. And I think a lot of his advisors have come from that place of quit or die. So I don't think he's getting the kind of advice that would help him to have a more broader perspective on what THR is. And he's also being told that THR is a tobacco company construct. So that's why he doesn't want to hear about it. That's part. The other part of this, and this is pretty much common knowledge now anyway, is that he was part of an angel investment fund to develop a pharmaceutical electronic cigarette. That is still sitting somewhere in the process for being submitted for a PMTA in the United States. Not PMTA, sorry. FDA approval, because it's going to be a medical device. It's not going to be a consumer device. So when you take those two aspects of Bloomberg into consideration, it makes it very clear to understand that, yes, he can say that, or his minions or the people that are funded by him can say, well, we're anti-tobacco, we're anti-smoking, blah, 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 blah. But in the background, again, now you have this that about the electronic cigarette that's being submitted for pharma approval. So what is it? Is it that he's anti-THR? Or is it that he is anti-consumer THR and he's more medical model? Now, the people that he deals with, and as you probably are aware, he and Bill Gates give a lot of money to the World Health Organization, a lot of money, and not just in tobacco, vaccines, public health, epidemiology. I mean, these guys, they throw heaps of money at second and third world countries to garner favor with them. So that when he comes in and says something like, oh, you got the smoking thing, oh, yeah, okay. Because, again, it comes down to money, and it comes down to we don't want to do anything that may negatively impact any revenue that's coming in or grants coming in. So, these are people using their money to wield their power. But it's very disconcerting that, this person who's supposedly anti-smoking, anti-vape is involved in, or was involved, we're not sure if he's still involved, but was part of the creation of a medical vaping device. You can't say you're against vaping if you're willing to fund a medical vaping device. There's a little bit of hypocrisy involved there, just a wee bit. So, I mean, the best way to address Michael Bloomberg would be to find somebody who knows him, or to get into his ear and say, you realize these people are handing you, a line of, effluent. Being able to do that, very difficult, because he's very well protected. And again, there is that vested interest that's involved. So the best way to fight it is to fight it with the facts. I mean, and it kind of puts us on the back foot, and it kind of makes us the underdog. But the only thing that we have is our truth and our experience, and that's all we can focus on, and that's all that we can promote, and that's the humanization of it. Because the people that are funded by him, like the union and the University of Bath and all of that stuff that's going on, they don't see us as people. They just see us as victims. They see us as numbers. That's the short answer.
Right. Well, that was detailed, and that was short. I'll agree to that, because the question is detailed, and there is a lot more which we can't go into right now. We do not have sufficient time to. Actually, this was the tip of the iceberg. But Jena, would you like to add something to this?
I would just like to strengthen what Nancy said, that the only weapon that we have is actually the truth. We have the science, as I mentioned in a past talk. Science is on the side of THR, and that's what we can tell people. So each time that a misinformation or a disinformation comes out, we'll just have to give them the truth. And the truth is based on science. That's what we have.
Right. And Asa, would you have something to add? Or
What these two said, I'm sure.
right. Thank you. Okay, so I have one more thing to ask of all three of you now, and I'll pop the question first. This is the beginning of 2021. 2020 has been really harsh on everyone globally. Humanity in general has suffered a lot, and we're optimistic and hoping to make a recovery and get better. But while we can't go into all aspects of everything, we know we had some targets, we had some plans for 2020 for THR, and things did not go the way we wanted. Some things went right, some things went wrong, as is the case with life in general always. But in the beginning of 2021, what do you people see to be the focus of THR? What do you see us doing? How is THR going to shape up in 2021? You can speak about your specific places, you can speak globally, whichever way you want to speak, but tell us what 2021 THR is going to look like according to you people. Asa, why don't you start?
Wow. That's from my point of view. I mean, hopefully, I'm always, like optimistic about this. That's why I'm still doing. But hopefully, 2021 will be better than 2020, and hopefully, the vaccination will come out soon, so we can get together and we can travel and we can make things happen. Right now, the government will probably put all of their focuses on COVID-19 pandemic situation first, and they will probably also, like they will say, like, okay, well, tobacco harm reduction, that's not even second thing to consider. That's way behind. It is nothing important. They don't think us as a citizens or as a voters or anything like that, but they were just like they don't have the human right anymore, since they want to smoke cigarettes, and that's the way they are thinking. And I think it's not only in Thailand but in many countries, especially in LMIC, our countries around, these areas, which is unfortunate. But hopefully, once the pandemic uh, gets better, hopefully people will turn around and start paying attention to tobacco harm reduction, and finally, we can kick some sense into them, that saying, hey, like what we are doing, we are helping you. We are not against what you are doing. If you want to get people to quit smoking, reduce the death rate, the casualties from cigarette and things like that. So hopefully, uh, someone will come up with some results soon, and we can go full steam ahead again. But it's, from my point of view, it will hopefully it will be better than 2020. So good luck to all.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
I might pick
Yep.
up from that. I agree with what Ace is saying. I also think that we're in for a bit of a battle. What is going on globally right now? Because the Conference of Parties is going to be happening probably virtually in either October or November of this year. As some of you may be aware, in Europe, they're reviewing the TPD, and a lot of countries over there are now starting to ban flavors. And that's a scary thing, because Europe used to be the bastion of, intelligence and pragmatic regulation. I think we're going to be in for a battle, and I think that battle is going to involve a lot of governments are going to be using COVID as an excuse to put forth a lot of punitive regulations and more bans. That's the battle we're going to be fighting. For us in the region, the Philippines, I'm hoping that, as horrible as that whole FDA Bloomberg thing was, or union thing was, I'm hoping that will also shine a light as to the machinations that are happening in the background in a lot of our countries, especially, as Asa said, with the LMICs and Bloomberg. I don't think we're going to have an easy year. I think we're going to have a battle on our hands, but I think we're also much better prepared for it now than we would have been, say, 2 or 3 years down the road, because we do have COVID in a strange way, and that enables us to be able to work together, I guess, closer, because none of us can do much of anything else because we can't go anywhere. But sharing that information and being very aware of the environment that we're working in, which is something that I know I'm much more aware of now than I would have been 3 years ago. So it's going to be an interesting year. I think we're in for a very, very interesting year, especially with the election in the United States and seeing what's going to happen with the new president and the new vice president and their FDA. So I say hold on and let's go, because we're in for a ride.
Right. And Jena, do you have anything to say on this?
Okay, I'm looking at it differently. Last year was the year when THR advocates achieved major gains. We were able to do a lot of social media events. And we were able to attend congressional hearings and put forth our positions. And it was also last year that we were able uncover the Bloomberg funding of the FDA, which is actually tasked to come up with policies related to THR. For this year, it's a great year for opportunities. With the COVID, everybody seems to be spending more time on social media. We'll just have to exhaust all the means that we can to reach out to these people who have the time to attend webinars and online events. True, we're up for a big battle, but we're stronger than ever. So I'm looking at it at a very positive way.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that, Jenna. Jaggi, maybe you can give us what THR in India is going to look like in 2021, a slight dose of that.
Yeah, see, like with everyone else around the world, COVID has kind of put THR efforts way behind in the priority list, and any efforts that we have been trying to make, talking or engaging with the governments or health officials to look at revoking bans or even to start engaging with them to talk about it, seems to be taking a backseat. And that's a point that we really need to work around. However, the government itself has been slipping small little things inside by doing these window dressings, banning, saying it's good, but it's, I don't know how they're going to police something like that when you have millions of cigarette shops in every nook and corner of every city in the country. And then talking about increasing legal age of smoking, these kinds of small little efforts to please or to talk of things that we are making an effort and this has not been forgotten, has been going on. So these are issues that we got to look at. However, from a perspective of the COVID pandemic itself, right, we have always been hammered. There is no evidence. There is no evidence, despite the overwhelming evidence that actually exists. Now, when it comes to the COVID vaccine itself, I mean, what was the evidence? What was the efficacy? What was the rapid amount, great amount of testing that was done? It is all done, compressed in just 1 year, and you have got vaccines rolling out. So I look at that as an opportunity for us to perhaps re-engage with the government and say, there is evidence only if you're willing to look for it and if you're willing to act on things. And that is something that we can take back to them. And I look at that as an opportunity, the way they have fast-tracked, the vaccines. And I believe that's an opportunity for us to work with. In India, we have real problems wherein if I am looking at vapers already know about how effective e-cigarettes are. We are allowed to use it per base is covered. But if you are looking at talking to smokers and talking to them about moving to less harmful alternatives, we have a problem as advocates because the government has banned it. Sure, I mean, there's a huge gray market out there, but as advocates, we cannot point them out to it and tell them you can go to this place. So I don't know how we are going to be able to bridge the gap as we promote THR, in this country and in countries where we are banned. So that's something to talk about, and I think we should be looking at working on those lines, spreading the message across to the smokers, because that's our catchment area. Those are the people we have to convince if we really need to make it a movement that actually drives forward and eventually gets countries to acknowledge that this is true and it is here to exist.
Right. What's interesting is, Jaggi, that throughout the episode, your video seemed to be lagging. And
you must understand, Kanav, you must understand that my video lagging is exactly what the evidence. Okay, they are always
Ah,
one step behind, and so that's why my video is deliberately like this.
that is true. That is definitely one way to look at it. Right. But with that, guys, I want to thank you all for joining us today. A lot of good talks, a lot of insights, a lot of good points for what to expect in the coming times and everything. Very, very interesting takes which you people have given. Asa, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Nancy, Jen, it was so nice meeting you people and talking to you today. You
Thank
guys
you.
really opened up my mind as well. And Juggy, as always, thank you. Even when you're actually being serious, you somehow bring interesting comedy to the whole show. And behind the scenes, Aaron and Manish,
Just
thank you
doing my
so much
job, man.
for
Just doing my job.
thank you so much for this episode. And hopefully, guys, you guys had fun, learned something. You could, subscribe, leave a like. I know we're not a very we're not like those people who are making those funny videos or playing pranks or good looking girls dancing around here and there. But we're fighting the good cause. Maybe give us a thumbs up, a comment, join the battle. All and any engagement from your side is well appreciated. Please spread the word. We are all fighting this battle together, and we hope to see you in the next episode as well. Thanks, stay safe, and see you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.